Hi, I'm Tessa from Tales from Outside the Classroom, and today I'm going to share with you how you can create a checklist in Google Sheets. So if I'm going to make a checklist that I'm going to use to keep track of student information, I'm likely going to begin by writing my student names in the first column. For me, I like having my student names here because it's easily accessible. So I'm just going to write student one. Now I hate the default fonts here, so I'm going to use this corner to select all of the cells, and that's a handy tool for you to just know how to modify all of the cells at one time. So I'm going to just change it to something else, and now I'm going to just modify this first column. So I'm going to make my student names a little bit bigger, so they're a little easier to see, and I know I'm going to need more space for longer student names. So I'm going to make that one bigger, and then I'm going to go ahead and keep going and add all of my student names. Now that I am done with my names, I'm going to do a little bit more formatting. So I know I want my first row to be larger because that's where information for assignments or whatever it is I'm tracking are going to go. I also know in order to make these checklists, I'm going to make them skinnier. So I'm going to click the first column and then drag with my mouse still pushed down through several other columns. So you might count how many you need. I'm just going to rough estimate here. And then once I had selected all of them, I just waited and hovered over this one corner to get the double arrow and dragged it to about the size I want. So now I want to add additional columns to be that size. So I'm actually going to hold down my control key because I'm on a PC, select additional columns, and then I'm going to come back here and hover again, and I want those new ones to be the same size as my old ones. So I'm just going to wait until I have that arrow on my hover and just click that line and let it go, and it will make it the same size. So this is probably enough. I am going to want these to be centered. So since these columns are already highlighted, I'm going to come over here to the alignment tool and center things. And so now all of my text is going to center in each column. I think I'm going to want my rows to be a little larger, so I'm going to hold and drag until I have all of my rows highlighted and make them a little bit larger. Just a little wider so I know that's there. So now I'm ready to start working. So if I'm using this to record a student's participation or work during distance learning, I might use a day per sheet. I might use a sheet per week. It's sort of however your assignments best fit for your students. I'm going to go ahead and just think of a few sample lesson ideas. So I'm going to put Monday lesson here, and you notice it gets cut off. So one of the things I want to do is to change the orientation of the text in this row. So I'm going to click the row header here, that number. That means anything in this row is going to have this formatting. I'm going to right click. Sorry, I'm not going to right click. I'm going to come up here to format, and I'm going to click text rotation, and I'm going to rotate my text at a 90-degree angle, which puts it then that direction. There's a couple other things you can do here. So instead of rotating it there, I can just tilt it down. I can stack it vertically, which is like that. But I usually prefer it at a 90-degree angle. As you see, I did not make that big enough, so I'm going to adjust that a little bit. And then I'm going to come back here and also align everything in the in this row to be centered and in the middle. So everything gets centered in the middle here. I'm going to change that just to be a little bit bigger. Now you of course don't have to have it go vertically. Let's say instead of having long and vertical, you wanted to make your columns wider. That is totally an option. You also can come and choose to wrap the text, meaning the row will get bigger to fit all of the text that you need, or clip it. It will cut it off. I just prefer to make mine rotated this way. So I'm going to do the same thing across. And then I'm going to add a couple other segments. So and I can just keep going. So I have this set up now. Let's say as I scroll, I don't see the title of that assignment. So the first thing I'm going to do is I select that row, and then I come up to View and go to Freeze one row. So I didn't really need to select that row since it's the top row, but that keeps that row frozen. I still am able to make it larger, so like Wednesday isn't cut off here. And now I can do the same also vertically, so that the student names travel as I go through the column. So to do that, I can just come to View, Freeze one column, and you see that gray bar comes up. And so those names stay as I move. This box, I guess I didn't mention at the beginning, I always start with the second column in the second row, because once I freeze, this sort of is the header for both. So you might put something like week of here, and this is where you're tracking the date or something similar here. So now let's make our checklist. So in order to make it a checklist, I'm going to highlight all of the cells that I'm going to want to be a checklist. So I'm going to go ahead and select all the way through R, which is what I resized, and I'm going to just hold down my mouse as I drag, and then come all the way down till I'm done finding my student. All of those are selected, and now I'm going to right-click and come to data validation all the way down. You can also find data validation under format here. So instead of a list from a range, I'm changing it to a checkbox. This now puts a checkbox in every spot. So if a student completes the work, I can just select it, and that student's work shows that that student completed it. I also can drag and choose a bunch and drag and choose a bunch, and instead of clicking, I can hit the space bar. So I can use the space bar to check or uncheck one or several. So to make this a little bit easier to use, it would be more appealing or easier to use if it was more appealing for the eye. So our columns and our rows can be differentiated a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and select, and then I'm going to come to alternating colors. So what this does is sets up the rows in alternating columns so you can track information as you go. It defaults to this ugly gray, so you can choose to just pick something different, and you can modify it. So right now, the header, meaning this first row, is this color. So I can switch and make that color a little bit different, and I can even just change the shading on this one. So I can click here and then make it darker by dragging it into darker and click OK, and then just that is darker. You can change so each row is a color. It defaults to white and one other color. You can change that, and then it saves in custom. Totally up to you. So I'm going to say done, and you can see it makes it easier to track the information as I go across. But let's say now I'm not liking this, and I want to make it even more colorful. So I'm going to undo what I did here and come back to just my blank template. The boxes are set up in here so I can modify them just like I would a font. So let's say I want everything in this column to have the font color of that like dark teal I made. So now my check marks when I fill them out are this color with a white background. Now I can also change the formatting of this cell to match that similarly by coming over to the fill color, changing it to that, and then changing the font here to white. I can do that same thing all the way down here. The color is a little too much for me, but I can change the font color to white here and the fill to this color. And then that way when I select it, it changes to that white box. Like I said, it's a little too dark for me, but I do like having, I'm not going to undo that, I do like having the top one color. So now let's say I want the next one to be a related or similar color, but different. I guess probably not related. I'm going to come again to my fill color, and I'm going to choose a custom color. I'm going to come over here, and I want it to be like a pink. So I'm going to scroll here, move over here. I need to adjust to make it a little bit. There we go. I'm going to click OK, change that, change the font to white, and then select all of the checkboxes I want, and then fill those also to that pink. Oops, I don't want to fill them. I want my text to be them, and then that color has changed. So I can continue doing that all along the way, and that just again makes it a little easier to differentiate the columns. If you're wanting to differentiate the rows, that coming over to format alternating colors is a little bit quicker and easier, a lot of bit quicker and easier to use. Now let's say I have all of my color coding the way I want, and I want to distinguish the first day of the week from the next day of the week. So I can highlight all of my columns that are for, say, Monday. I can come over here to borders and do the outer border, and it has now put a border around all of those. So you can see there's that separation. So I'm going to do the same for Tuesday. Make an outer border. Oops, I didn't do the column. I only did that top row. I'm going to do the columns, outer border, and now it has done that same for Tuesday. So I can just keep going to separate every day of the week so I can quickly and easily see if a student completed all of their Monday work, if they completed all of their Tuesday work, etc. Once I have my spreadsheet set up for the week, I like to keep this as a master. So I'm going to rename this down below as a master, and now I have it ready to go every single week to use to track my information. Now that I have it set up as a master, I'm going to click here and click duplicate. And this duplicates it to a new sheet right within the spreadsheet. So now I'm going to rename it, and I can rename it whatever I would like. I can have it set up for the week. I can have it set up for a day. I'm going to come back here and also change the color and change it to that first color I made. So this changes that color on the bottom. So if you did a sheet per subject or per course period per week, if you're a middle school teacher, changing the color of these tabs could be a super helpful organizational tool. One other thing I wanted to show you is you can set up point values. You can set up the same point value for every checkbox, or you can set up different ones. So let's say I want all of my checkboxes to have the same point value. I'm going to select all of them. I'm going to right click and go back to data validation. And I'm going to use custom cell values. So if it's checked, it's worth 5 points. If it's unchecked, it's worth 0. I can make it worth 10 points. For if the work is completed, I can make it whatever I want. I click save, and now each of those is worth a point value. Now, if I want to see what that total is, I can come over here, and I need to add a formula. So I'm going to insert a function, and the easiest is sum, meaning addition. So I'm going to make the sum of, and then I can just drag, click the first one, drag all the way over to select all of them in that row for that student, and it finds the total. I hit enter, and it tells me they have 5 points. If I select more, you see it goes up. So I can name this column points total. And now I want to do that for everyone. So the nice thing is I just did that for one. I come over to this corner, see that little box that comes up, and see how I have that pointed cursor. I select, I drag down all the way through student 22. Sometimes that drag gets a little crazy. I let go, and it finds the points value for that student, and you can see it changes as I select it. Now, if I wanted to make different point values for each different assignment, I could select everything in a column, select all the check boxes, right-click that data validation, and make it worth 7 points for this one, 5 for this one, do the same thing and make this one worth 8 points or 10 points. So you can have different values right within it. I'm going to make this one 9. You can see it made that one 9, it has that one 7, and now that one 5. Now, let's say you want to find a student's average. So this is a points total, but let's say you want to find out sort of their percentage based on this being complete. There might be a way to do it with checkboxes of different point values, but I'm going to do it with all of them being the same. So I'm going to come back and change my data validation, data validation, and make sure all of them are worth 5 points. And I'll explain why in a second. So every checkbox is worth 5 points. This student earned 15 points because they have 3 checkboxes selected. So now in this column, instead of doing points total, I'm going to do their grade average. So the average is the number of points that that student has out of the number of points possible, right? So I'm going to have the spreadsheet figure that out for me. So I'm going to do equal to tell it it's going to figure out a formula. And then I'm going to tell it is going to find the value of this column that's here. So T2, that's the number of points that student has. So it's helpful. That column needs to be here so you can select it, divided by the number of points possible. So the number of points possible is 5 times, so I'm going to do 5 times, because each assignment is worth 5, the number of assignments. Now, I could count that and change that, but I like to have the spreadsheet do that for me. So I'm going to do count. It'll count the number of boxes I select. So I'm going to count these. E2 to R2, and parenthesis to close that out, and hit enter. And it gave me a value that is not correct because I'm missing a set of parentheses. So I need this all to be the denominator. So I'm going to put parentheses around the entire thing. And then my result will be that student's age or grade as a decimal. So I could change it into a percentage by selecting those columns, coming over to format, number, and change it to a %. Now, if you want to get very fancy, you can also change the formatting, the conditional formatting on just this cell. So I'm going to select it. I'm going to go to format, conditional formatting, and then I'm going to set up a rule. So if what is shown is greater than or equal to, let's say 70%, it's going to display as green, this green highlighted. I'm going to add another rule and say if it is less than or equal to 40%, I'm going to change it to red. So I'm going to click done, and you can see those are the two I set up. And for the moment, I'm going to leave it just like this and exit out to show you, and it changed to red. I'm going to come back to that conditional formatting though, so I can put something in between 40 and 70. So if it's greater than or equal to 70, or it's less than or equal to 40, it has colors. So I need it a color for 41 to 69. So if that cell is between 40 and 70, it is going to turn yellow. 40% and 70%. And I will click done, exit out, and you can see it's still there. I'm going to go ahead and drag this corner down, all the way down, so applies that to everybody. Now, I'm going to show you what that looks like by giving some students additional points. And so you can see as their point value increased, their grade average increased, and then that column also changed colors to reflect it. So once you have your master set up in the way that works for you, it's super easy to duplicate, keep going, have all of your data in one place, and really make the formulas and make the sheets work for you and your data. I hope this is helpful.